today I will be talking about a very important topic. I have come up with 5 tips that I think are crucial when it comes to giving an online interview for your dream university. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Hey guys, and welcome to my channel Ratty Expounds. So if you've been following this channel for a while, you'd wonder why I'm calling this channel Ratty Expounds in the first place, given that this channel was actually called Resilient Ratty. And if you've been following this channel right from the very beginning, you know that it was called Ratty Talk. So I made a couple of changes to the name of the channel, and the reason I did it this time was because I was sitting and pondering over what the name of the channel is and how I felt that the channel name should be reflective of what the channel is about. So I thought Ratty Expounds should be a good way for people who are new to this channel to understand what this channel is about. So all in all, as the name suggests, Ratty Expounds is a channel where I elucidate my personal, professional and academic experiences. That is what I'm going to be expounding on. And today I will be talking about a very important topic, which is basically the last mile when it comes to getting your university admit, and that is your online interviews. So again, this video is not for in-person interviews. I should probably make a different video for that. I feel I don't want to mix up the two things because they are very distinct from one another in some ways, I feel. So this video is going to be talking about, I think, are very important, crucial tips when it comes to giving an online interview for your dream university. So just to give you a little bit of a background, I have given 5 or 6 video interviews in the past for my university admits. I kind of forgot to mention, in case you're new here, I did my master's in marketing from Purdue University. I graduated in May 2024 and I'm back now in India. As to why I'm back in India, I have actually expounded on the same, and you can check out that video on the top right hand side of the screen just about here. You will see a link to the video which talks about why I decided to come back to India. And the 2 live interviews I gave were for the marketing program at Purdue and for Northwestern's Medill School of Communication. And drawing from my experience of these interviews, I have come up with 5 tips that I think are crucial when it comes to giving an online interview. So the first tip that I have for you is to know your SOP and your resume thoroughly. So remember guys, the admissions officer or the university representative doesn't really know you in person. The only thing that they know about you is mostly from your SOP and from your resume, and thus it becomes imperative for you to know these 2 documents inside out. Make sure that you're not bluffing during the interview because they will be able to figure that out. Trust me, I will be talking about that in some time as well. But when it comes to what you've done in your resume and in your statement of purpose, you are likely to be questioned, even cross-questioned about it actually. So be prepared with all that you've done. Maybe you've done that internship that you mentioned on your resume a while back, 2 or 3 or 4 years back. So it makes sense to revisit all the documents of that internship, whether those are any notes that you made or any PowerPoint presentations that you made, because for example, I worked at LG Electronics and I was heavily questioned on my LG internships. I did a couple of internships at LG Electronics and I was questioned a lot on those internships during my Northwestern interview. So it makes sense for you to know what you mentioned in your resume. So in case there are certain projects that you did, I did a certain project on the OLED television, so I made sure that I went through the entire PowerPoint presentation that I made for that project, because I was questioned on it and I was able to talk about the insights that I was able to derive out of that project. So it's crucial for you to know your SOP and your resume really well. Again, try to talk about how things that have been mentioned in your SOP and your resume can be tied to leadership qualities, because at the end of the day, all of these universities are looking to hire students who they see as potential leaders for tomorrow. So make sure that whatever you've mentioned in those 2 documents are somehow tied into leadership initiatives. And in case you haven't mentioned something which can be thought of as a leadership initiative, but it hasn't been mentioned in those 2 documents, make sure that you talk about it, because there is a possibility that the admissions counselor may ask you to tell him or her something about yourself that isn't mentioned in these 2 documents. So make sure that you have 2 or 3 things that you can talk about yourself which haven't already been spoken about. So the second tip that I have for you is to be authentic. So I spoke about how you shouldn't be bluffing during the interview. That's what my 2 cents are about this whole thing. I think that you should be very honest when it comes to your application process, because the thing is, while the interviewer may not be a student of psychology, maybe he or she has been a student of psychology, you never know, but either ways, they have had enough experience interviewing a lot of students like you, hundreds, maybe even thousands. They've been doing this for years possibly, so they will be able to understand when you're not being authentic and when you're bluffing your way into answering a question. So they they may be able to figure these things out in ways that you may feel is not a big deal, but actually makes all the difference in the world. When you're lying, your lack of eye contact is going to be apparent. The way you speak, the change in tone of your voice. These are just some ways that they will be able to figure out that you're lying. Of course, now some people are just exceptionally good at lying, so they're able to get their lie their way out of any and every situation. But I personally think that it's very important and very crucial for you to be honest to both to yourself and to the admissions officer. So make sure that whatever you mentioned in the SOP and resume is actually true, and what you're talking about during your interview is also something which is factual and not something that is fabricated. The third point that I have is do your research. Now this arguably is the most important point to keep in mind, because when it comes to an interview, for both my interviews, Northwestern's and Purdue's, one thing that was common in both interviews was I was asked why I want to join their university. And trust me guys, this is the game changer. This is where they find out whether you're truly interested in the university or just applied for the sake of applying. Because if you tell them, for example, if I were to take my example and I tell them that the reason I picked Northwestern and Purdue is because they're top universities, while that is true, it's a very generic answer and not enough to crack the interview. You need to be giving some more specific reasons that are more pertinent to the universities that are in question. So some of the things that you could possibly talk about are the core values of the university. You can talk about the core values of the university that you're applying to and how they align with your personal values, and how there's something, or if they don't align with your values, there's something that you would like to imbibe and you feel that being a part of this university would help imbue those values in your very being. So that is one thing that you could talk about. The second thing that you can talk about, how you've reached out to alumni or current students of the university and how they've been so helpful and approachable to you. Again, this ties back to the second point. Make sure that you've actually done these things. Networking is crucial. You will understand once you go abroad that networking is everything when it comes to landing a job in the US especially, or anywhere in the West for that matter. So make sure that if you're talking about having reached out to someone, you actually have, because there's a good chance that they may cross-question you into they may cross-question you and ask you who that person is, because like I said, they kind of want to understand whether you're being true to them or not. While it's obviously excellent to do your research when it comes to the university, also make sure that you do your research when it comes to the interviewer himself or herself, because at the end of the day, one of the factors that contributes to your admission is whether the admissions office actually likes you or not. So it's very important to make the conversation very natural and engaging, and for that you need to kind of understand the background of the interviewer. So just make sure that you go through their LinkedIn profiles, find out any common interests that you have, any common hobbies, and these are the sort of things which will help connect you with them on a personal level, which I think is key, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we love fostering a good connection. So it's of paramount importance to leave that indelible mark on your admissions officer, and in order to do that, knowing something about them on a personal level or professional level and talking about that is definitely going to help you stand out. So all in all, what I would say is do your research really, really well. Research the university, research things about the US, why you want to go to the US, why you want to go to that specific university, and also do your fair share of research about the interviewer himself or herself. This will help you stand out from a lot of other applicants which are applying for the same program that you are. So now the fourth tip that I have for you is to take care of the logistics. Now this may seem very obvious, but I feel like it's always better to state out the obvious rather than missing it out completely. So make sure that you are alone in the room that you're giving your interview in. Both my interviews, my Northwestern interview was conducted in my living room at a time when there was no one at home, and my Purdue interview was again conducted in the living room when everyone else was in their respective rooms and were not going to come out for that period of half an hour or so. So make sure that you have that you have the benefit of that silence when you're giving the interview. So make sure that the lighting around you is good as well. The fifth final point that I have is, and this is again a very important point, just like all of them, and the last tip that I have for you is don't panic. This might be easier said than done, but it's very important for you to not lose your cool or be very cool and calm and patient when you're giving your interviews, because there will be times where you will be cross-questioned. Again, like I said, which is why I feel being authentic is very important. What you're saying naturally flows and you don't really have to worry about what you're saying and the contents of what you're saying. But even otherwise, there may be certain things about your resume that you're not that you're a little insecure about, maybe gaps in your resume, maybe you took maybe your undergrad score isn't that great, or your entrance test score wasn't that great, or maybe you don't have the relevant work experience. But if you're cross-questioned about that, remember to take a deep breath and know that the only reason you're being interviewed and the only reason that you've gotten this far is because they liked your profile. So even if your profile isn't perfect, they're not going to be looking at that one thing which may not be ideal in their eyes, because at the end of the day, there is no such thing as an ideal profile. They want to get to know you on a personal level. So even if you don't have everything that ticks all those boxes which you think need to be ticked, for example, I'll just give you my example. So I did my undergrad at Mitibai College, after which I did my MBA from Athena School of Management. I did not have any full-time work experience, but I did talk about. But while I did not have any full-time work experience, I made sure that I expounded on my internship experience, explained all the intricacies of what I did, and hence convinced the admissions officer that even though I don't have work experience, I am very much capable of taking care of myself in a class full of people who do have work experience. The other thing that I was questioned about during my Purdue interview was when I did my MBA at Athena, my scores were not as good as my scores for undergrad and my GMAT score. So I was questioned on it. The admissions officer asked me how he could convince the other admission officers that I deserve this position at Purdue University. So now this was the perfect recipe for freaking out, because that is the one thing that I had not even prepared for. It's not something that even crossed my mind, because I thought that my academics were pretty sorted. But I was questioned about it, and instead of and I just managed to maintain my calm and tell him that while my MBA scores may not be in par with my other scores, while my MBA scores may not be maybe a little bit on the lower side, what does make up for it is the fact. So it's very important for you to have a good justification for why this happened. So I had justification that I gave was that I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, which I was. Again, I was being authentic. I was the president of the Rotaract Club of the Institute, the president of the International Society of the Institute. I was taking part in a lot of joint projects. So I spoke about all the other things that I did, because of which my academics did not have my undivided attention. And again, to further assuage any fears of me not having the academic prowess to get through this demanding program, I spoke about how my undergrad scores were really good. Again, I also spoke about how my average GMAT score was a good score, which again buttresses the fact that I am someone who can withstand the academic rigor of a university like Purdue. So it's very important for you to keep your calm and remember that you've made it this far. They've seen something in you. And the reason that they're cross-questioning you is because they want to see whether you succumb to pressure or not. So don't. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but just keep this in mind. Keep in mind that the interview you're 95% done. You're probably 90% through the university. It's just the last leg, the last lap that is left, and you want to make sure that you remember that you belong, and which is why you're giving the interview in the first place. So don't panic. Also, I spoke about logistics, but there is a possibility, especially in online interviews, that things that are not in your hand, not in your control may happen. That's it, guys. Those are what my 2 cents are when it comes to how I think you can make the most of your online interview. If you made it this far, remember that you've done a fantastic job. Soak it all in and remember that you are incredible. It's very important. Self-love is very important at this point. And yeah, just be yourself, be authentic, and don't stress too much. That's just what I have to say about my online interviews. Honestly, you just have to keep the same things in mind for the most part, and remember to enjoy the process, because as beautiful as the destination is, it's the journey which actually makes the destination even more beautiful, and it's very important to enjoy the journey. So that's what I have for you today. Let me know what kind of videos you would like me to make in the future. Again, I expound on my personal, academic, professional experiences, so anything and everything within these categories should do. So yeah, that's about it. I shall see you guys very, very soon. Take care. Until next time.